My name's Tom. I'm 35, single, and if you'd asked anyone in my building 2 months ago, they would have said I kept to myself. And they'd be right. I wasn't exactly friendly. People annoyed me. Their small talk, their loud kids, their politics. Especially the fake smiles. I'd lost my mom a year ago, cancer, and after that I just shut down. My world got smaller, quieter, and colder. So when the apartment below mine got rented, I wasn't thrilled. The new tenant moved in quietly. No big truck, no family swarming around, just one man, a couple suitcases, and a bookshelf. I saw him once on the stairs. He nodded at me, offered a small smile, and said, "Good evening." That's it. No hand outstretched. No long introduction. Just calm. Something about it rubbed me the wrong way. Maybe it was his accent, soft African, couldn't place it. Or maybe it was his clothes, loose-fitting tunic, simple and clean. Or maybe it was the prayer mat I saw tucked under his arm. But deep down, I think it was a peace in his face. I didn't trust peace like that. He kept to himself. No noise, no drama. The building got quieter, honestly. Cleaner, too. I started noticing trash wasn't piling up near the bins. Someone was organizing the laundry room. I had a good guess who it was. And then there was the smell. Every Friday evening, something fragrant would drift up through the vents. Spices, herbs, slow-cooked lamb maybe? My stomach would growl, but I'd never admit it. Instead, I'd grumble and open a window. Then one evening, I came home to find a small plate of food on my doormat. A sticky note read, "Friday meal, peace be upon you. Musa." I stared at it like it was a bomb. I didn't touch it, just left it there for hours. Eventually, I picked it up and tossed it in the fridge. Later that night, I ate it cold, and it was amazing. That was the first time I Googled anything about Islam. Not because I was curious, but because I wanted to dislike him with more precision. See, I'd grown up with a certain image of Muslims. You know the one. Angry, strict, always yelling in the streets or on the news. Foreign, aggressive. Musa wasn't any of those things. And that annoyed me more than if he'd been. It was like he didn't fit the role I had written for him in my head. So I started watching videos, debates, found the loudest critics of Islam, and absorbed every word. I highlighted verses of the Quran people claimed were violent, backward, or oppressive. I made a list, and I waited for a chance to confront him. That chance came one Sunday afternoon. He was sitting alone in the small courtyard out back, reading under a tree. I walked past him once, then turned back. "Hey," I said, "you got a minute?" He looked up and smiled gently. "Sure." I sat down across from him, not entirely sure what I was doing, but my mouth took over. I read something in the Quran the other day. Kind of disturbing. Mind if I ask about it? He didn't flinch, just nodded once. Of course. So I quoted a verse I barely understood. Something about fighting, one of those verses taken out of context a million times. I waited for him to get defensive, but he didn't. He just explained calmly, gave context, talked about the time it was revealed, about self-defense, about restraint. Then he said, "There's also a verse right after that, about peace. Would you like to read it?" I didn't answer. Instead, I stood up and said, "Just curious." But I wasn't. I was threatened, because nothing about his reaction matched what I wanted him to be. That night, I read the verse he mentioned, and then the one after that, and the one after that, and I hated how normal it all sounded. It wasn't fire and brimstone. It was measured, thoughtful, even beautiful in places. I told myself it was just good PR. That guys like Musa were the exception. But part of me, the quiet, angry, lonely part, knew better. The next morning, I saw him in the stairwell. He smiled again. And for the first time, I didn't smile back. Because deep down, I wasn't ready to see him as human. I still wanted to beat him. Not physically, mentally. Theologically, I wanted to out-argue him. To catch him in some contradiction. To break that calm mask he wore like armor. But I didn't realize it then. That mask wasn't hiding anything. It was who he really was. The weird thing was, After that first conversation, I wanted another. I kept telling myself I was trying to catch him, to expose some hypocrisy. But the truth was, I just couldn't stop thinking about how calm he stayed, how he didn't argue or try to make me look dumb. He just answered. So I poked again. "Hey, Musa," I said next time I saw him near the mailbox, "does your religion really say women should obey their husbands no matter what?" He didn't even raise an eyebrow. He just said, "Not quite. Islam gives both men and women responsibilities. But obedience isn't blind. It's based on mutual respect." Then he smiled, like he knew I was baiting him and didn't mind. He even added, "There's a chapter called The Women. Maybe read it and let me know what you think." I nodded, pretending I would, but that night I actually did, and I hated how balanced it sounded. It didn't match the memes. It didn't match the angry headlines or the fear-mongering videos. It felt like someone had handed me a puzzle, and the pieces weren't where I thought they'd be. A week later, I saw Musa again, this time sitting in the courtyard with that same small book open in his lap. I noticed it had bookmarks and notes tucked inside. Not a single page was dog-eared or stained. "Do you actually believe all of it?" I asked without warning. He looked up, surprised. "The Quran." "Yeah, I mean every word." He nodded slowly. "Yes, but not like a checklist, more like a compass." That sentence stuck with me. We ended up talking for over an hour. He told me about how he grew up in Senegal. His father passed away when he was a kid, and his mother raised 5 children by herself. He said the first time he read the Quran seriously, he cried, because it felt like someone finally understood him. I asked him why he moved to America. He paused for a second and said, "Peace of mind." That confused me. "You left home, family, everything for peace of mind?" He smiled. "Sometimes. Peace comes where you don't expect it." Then I asked something I hadn't planned to. "What do you think happens after we die?" He didn't hesitate. "We return to the one who made us, and we're asked about our time here. Not what we own, but who we were, what we did with truth once we saw it." That last part stung, because I'd seen a glimpse of it, and all I did was look for flaws. A few days later, it was my mom's birthday, or would have been. I didn't tell anyone. Just kept my head down, worked late, avoided phone calls. When I got home, I found a small card taped to my door. "I don't know what today means for you, but I said a prayer for your mother tonight. May peace find you. Musa." I stood in that hallway for 5 full minutes, staring at the card like it might vanish. How did he know? I didn't tell him about her. Not really. Just mentioned in passing once that I was done with family. And he remembered and prayed for someone he never met. That night, I didn't sleep much. I stared at the ceiling, replaying that sentence over and over. What we did with truth once we saw it. And something cracked. Not a full break, just a fracture, but enough to let the light in. The next day, I did something I never thought I'd do. I knocked on his door. Musa opened it, surprised but warm, and I said, "Can we talk?" "Of course," he said, stepping aside. He poured tea, sat across from me, and waited. I didn't have a speech ready. Just questions. Big ones, ugly ones, honest ones. And he answered all of them. Not like a preacher, like a friend. We talk about God, pain, guilt, ego, doubt, about loneliness, about fear. At one point I asked, "Do you ever get angry?" He chuckled. "Of course. I'm human, but I try not to speak while angry. The prophet taught us that anger burns the soul faster than fire burns wood." That didn't sound like domination. That sounded like discipline. And I realized he had power, but not the kind I understood. His power came from patience. And mine came from fear. I thought I had him figured out. After weeks of small talks and reading, I decided to take things public. Set a trap so big he couldn't slip away. One Saturday afternoon, I invited a few neighbors over to the courtyard. Quiet folks, some skeptical about Musa, some just curious. I planned to corner him, though everything I had learned from those anti-Islam videos right in his face. The moment came. I started with a simple question. "Musa, How do you justify violence in the Quran? What about those verses about fighting and killing? The crowd leaned in. The tension was thick. Musa didn't flinch. He looked at me calmly and said, "Thank you for your question." Then he paused, took a breath. In the Quran, these verses were revealed during times of war, when the early Muslims were defending themselves. He continued, "But Islam forbids aggression. The same Quran says, if they incline to peace, then you must also incline to it." Then he said something that hit me like a punch in the gut. The real jihad, the struggle, is within, against one's own ego and anger. A few neighbors nodded. Others looked surprised. Then, instead of arguing or shouting, Musa simply closed his eyes, bowed his head, and quietly began to pray. The silence was deafening. I stood there stunned. I was waiting for anger, for a fight, for him to call me ignorant or hateful. But instead, he prayed, and something in me cracked. After the prayer, the atmosphere changed. People approached Musa with questions, not challenges. I felt invisible. Later, I caught up with Musa as he was leaving. I said, "Why didn't you answer me back? Why pray?" He smiled softly and said, "Because words can build walls, but prayer builds bridges." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about his words. The real jihad is within. I thought about my anger, my pride, my bitterness, about the emptiness I carried since my mom died. A week later, Musa invited me to a community event. I almost said no, but something told me to go. When I arrived, I saw people from all walks of life, black, white, young, old, all sharing food, stories, and laughter. Musa introduced me as his neighbor. For the first time in months, I felt welcome. That night, I asked Musa about his past. He told me he grew up in a village torn apart by conflict, lost his parents young, fled to America hoping for peace and a new beginning. I told him about my mom, my loneliness, my anger. He listened without judgment. He said, "Pain is universal. Faith helps us carry it." After that, I looked at the Quran differently, not as a weapon to attack, but as a guide. I realized I was fighting my own demons more than anyone else. I never thought I'd say this out loud, but Musa saved me, not from some external enemy, not from the world, but from myself. After that community event, something inside me changed. I started showing up more, listening more, learning more. One evening, as we sat sipping mint tea in his modest apartment, I asked him, "How do you do it? Stay so calm, so patient, when people come at you like I did?" He smiled softly and said, "I don't seek power or victory, Tom. I seek peace. And peace comes from knowing who you truly are and who your Creator is." That hit me harder than any argument. I thought about my life, the walls I'd built, the bridges I'd burned, the loneliness, the grief, the hate. Then one night, I sat alone with the Quran on my lap. I whispered the words I never thought I'd say. There is no God but God, and Muhammad is his messenger. The next morning, I knocked on Musa's door. He greeted me like a brother. Together, we prayed my first prayer. It was awkward and imperfect, but it was real. Not everyone understood. My old friends called me crazy. My family was confused, but I didn't care anymore, because I found something that no one could take away. Faith. Musa and I volunteer now at the community center. We share stories, meals, and smiles. We are brothers. If you're watching this and holding on to hate, fear, or judgment, consider this. Sometimes the people you think you need to break are the ones who will heal you. Thank you for listening to my story. If it moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories of real change and hope.